Bill Sager, and this is Fresh Air Hawaii, sponsored by ThinkTech Hawaii. Today we're talking with Pauline Sato about educational technology. Pauline, you work for a couple of organizations. The Agricultural Leadership Foundation of Hawaii is one. What is their mission, and how do they, what's their mission?
Okay. Well, the Agricultural Leadership Foundation of Hawaii is a nonprofit organization, and basically the mission is to provide leadership development opportunities for people working in the agricultural, natural resources, and rural communities. So it's working with people who are out there in the farms and ranches, nurseries, watershed areas, and helping them with their leadership skills so that A, they can run their business better, and B, help support each other so that the agricultural and natural resources sectors are more successful and sustainable in Hawaii.
The program's been very successful. You run classes.
Mm-hmm.
When's the next one?
Well, it runs, the program started almost 30 years ago, so it's not a new program, and every 2 years or so it runs a leadership program, agricultural leadership program. The next one is class lucky number 13, and it starts in September of 2010. We're actually currently in the recruitment phase. So we're actively looking for people interested in joining this next program, which actually runs about 16 months, not quite 2 years. And the deadline actually is July 2nd.
How does the program work? A year and a half of what, regular school every?
No, it's actually pretty creative because the people that we recruit and select to be in this program are working professionals. So they can't really take off from work for long stretches of time. It needs to really work within what their timing is available. So we try to get about a dozen, maybe 12 to 14 people statewide, and representing a diversity of occupations in these sectors. So they could be, like I said, farmers, ranchers, nursery workers. They could do research on plants. They could be conservation workers in both land and the ocean, and trying to get them from across the islands and working together as a team or a cohort. So these people will need to learn how to work together, like intensively. Basic networking, but even deeper than that, because the types of things that we train them in our seminars, so we're probably going to have about 8 seminars over the 16-month period, so once every 2 months or so, and they're about 4-day-long seminars. So
and they all get together.
They all
at
get
one
to
location.
physically get together, so they have to make the
spread
commitment.
That location around
we
the
do.
islands?
Actually, the first meeting has traditionally always been on Hawaii Island, the Big Island. So they go there, and then there's another session on Maui, another session on Kauai and Oahu. So it's not totally Oahu-based. And the experience is pretty broad. There's some classroom time on how to run effective meetings, how groups work, how to facilitate collaboration, how to think strategically. And these are skills that can be applied to any field. But we want to really try to focus on the agricultural and natural resources field because many of those folks don't get that kind of training in school. But it's so important to work with others, and it's easy to just focus on your farm and not pay attention to everything else. But if you do that, you miss a lot of things, and you're also not necessarily helping the rest of the...
And public policy is so important
Exactly.
to agriculture.
Right.
Everything from transportation to how water is distributed.
And that's part of this program, is to understand those different issue areas. Transportation, maybe marketing, or the reason why we want to, this year we're expanding to natural resources folks and not just agriculture, is there are many shared issues like invasive species, for example. Things that could harm your farm could also harm the forest, and how do you prevent them from coming in, and what are the policies that are out there? What's the farm bill? You know, how does that affect the kind of funding you might get, whether you're a farmer, or sometimes it helps natural resources workers too. So part of the training is going to the legislature
And actually lobbying your
well, actually shadowing
Shadowing.
the legislators to see what they have to go through and how a bill is made. And it culminates in a trip to Washington, D.C.
Really?
to understand the federal side, meeting the congressional delegation, learning about the Farm Bill and Department of Agriculture, you know, all that stuff that you might see, read about in the paper, but you're actually meeting the people and understanding that it's not just Hawaii. You have to think of the whole nation, right, when we make policies, and you know, how it works and how lobbying works, et cetera. And also tagging onto the Washington, D.C. trip is a trip to another state that they get to choose where they want to go and study natural resources and agriculture in that state.
The something as simple as fuel costs are impacted at the national and state
Right.
levels.
Right.
But,
And even on that issue, see, why this program even began in the first place is, you know, Hawaii's agriculture has changed over time. There was a time when it was sugar and pineapple, right? That's the main
Right.
plantation type of ag. And then it changed to more diversified ag and really started, you know, breaking the big five and making it into, you know, much smaller businesses. So there needed to be a way to have these people connect somehow. But now it's changing even more, and we're talking about, you know, growing by energy, like, you know, things that you can burn to make biodiesel, or you know, even algae, right? That you can make energy from, and using ag land. So those are issues that
so you're
are
trying
coming up.
to attract people from all of those areas to your classes.
Yeah, and it's, you know, a lot of times there's opposing views, right? Especially when it comes to genetically modified organisms and organic farming.
There's a big business here in Hawaii.
Yeah, and you know, I hear it all the time, the clash, and I guess our perspective is bring everybody to the table. We all need to learn from each other. We may not agree on everything, but if we can at least sit at the table together, understand the issues, work things out if we can, and you know, really learn how to work together, because we're on this island together.
How does educational technology fit into what you're trying to accomplish there?
Well, educational technology is a term that's not easy to define, so I'll just use my own definition. Some people think, oh, technology, so it must mean computers, it must mean
online learning,
online video, and that's true. It does include that, but it's not only that. I went to the University of Hawaii College of Education to get my EdTech master's degree, and what we learned there was it's actually a systematic process of learning how people learn and how to make them learn better, how to facilitate their learning. And if that can include modern technology like videos and online things like that, then bring that in. But don't just rely on the technology to do the teaching. You have to understand the basics of how people learn, what motivates them, what facilitates greater learning. And part of that too is just making it more action-oriented, you know, not just, you know, passive learning, but making it problem-solving, you know, real-world kind of issues, getting that involved. So for this Ag Leader program, I think it's that exposure to all these issues, meeting the people, learning about them, and then where we can bring in the technology, whether it's, you know, learning new technologies for farming, as well as for communications. We have a website, but hopefully we'll introduce things like maybe blogging and online learning that can help these people learn, because they're from different islands, they don't always get to see each other. We want to make sure that they can still keep their communication going
Right.
during the class as well as beyond. We have about 135 alumni now from all the different years.
And I understand some of them are in very important positions.
Right.
What has been the impact of your program?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're trying to measure, because you always want to measure impact. And I think for this one, it's a little bit more long term, right? Because you're not going to take the class and take a leadership role right away. I mean, many of them are already leaders, but sometimes it takes years, right,
Yes.
to develop the experience and the networking. So we have people who been head of the Farm Bureau, or their rural communities. Maybe they're on nonprofit boards.
Right.
They're president of the boards, things like that. But some of them, maybe not so much high profile, but they're actually working to help farmers do their job better. We have people working for the University of Hawaii who've been through this training, and they're facilitating the farmers to actually do their job better by being, better leaders.
You really don't know how you're touching a life until they've had time to do it. I trained foresters in the Division of Forestry and watched them come to the top of the organization.
Right.
Yeah. So, the other organization you work with is the Malama Learning Center. And how was that created? What?
Right. Well, the Malama Learning Center, again, is another nonprofit organization which has a much younger history than the other, the Ag Leadership Program. It basically is a vision that diverse people had from an educational point of view, but looking at sustainability in our islands, and how do we teach people to learn more, to live more sustainably in an island system. I was working for the Nature Conservancy at the time this concept blossomed, and I met up with the principal of Kapolei High School at the time, Al Nagasako. Kapolei, as you might know, is one of the newest high schools. In fact, it is still the newest public high school on Oahu. It just made its 10th anniversary this year. And when he started up the school, he had a vision of that school being the hub of Kapolei, which is supposed to be the second city, right, for Oahu. So there's a lot of new people moving in, a lot of changes happening, but not much of a
Sense of community.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
No traditions, really, even except for the school, what do we do as a school? How do we do our graduations? All of those things had to be developed. And we just saw it as a great opportunity. We're at the Nature Conservancy. We're looking at ways to make conservation more relevant to everyday people. Because, to scientists and biologists, we get it. We understand how important it is to protect native species in the forest.
But if you don't get out there and
If
plant
you
a tree,
exactly.
you
Or
don't
you're
know why
like,
it's important.
Right. Why should I care about that little red bird,
Yeah.
I mean, if it goes extinct, who cares? So we wanted to make it more relevant to people, everyday people, and bring it down to the schools. So he invited us to work together. They have some land that they were going to develop a auditorium on, but they didn't have enough money. So I said, well, if we raise the money, maybe we can build something that can meld both the science side as well as the culture and the arts. They wanted a performing arts center. And I've always felt that there's a strong link between nature and art. If you look at paintings, if you
Yes.
look at woodwork, music, plays, a lot of them are inspired by nature. And what I thought is, if we can use the arts and the Hawaiian culture and other things to teach people about conservation and the environment, we're reaching a whole new audience. And that's what we're aiming to do.
And the Hawaiian culture is important in all of this,
right.
because they're tied so tightly to the land.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
It would be a shame if at some point these native species that are mentioned in Hawaiian chants and dances no longer exist. Because then what do the students, how do they describe this? What does it look like? How does that bird fly? What does the tree look like? It'll be a totally different type of experience if they don't
So,
exist anymore.
Your educational approach in the Learning Center is to get people doing things, learning from doing, and so how does your educational technology fit into those
Right.
programs?
Well, it's pretty diverse for this one especially. One thing we're doing is we're actually planning to build a new facility, a green building, which will incorporate a lot of new technologies in there. A green building meaning it's has alternative energy. It doesn't use a lot of energy. It uses it conserves water. It's healthy to be in. So that in itself is going to be a teaching tool for us.
Can you grow gardens on your roof?
We're going to have, knock on wood, a green roof, and we're all going to have all kinds of gardens, native plant gardens, edible gardens, cultural gardens. We want to get people actively engaged in doing things where they can come to the center and learn, as well as then go out into the forest if they want to, into the oceans if they want to, and take that knowledge that they gained into the larger community. And basically what we want to do is nurture the learning and then have it go out. And
so you're trying to create both a lifestyle and an exposure to working in conservation and natural resources.
Exactly. We're because we'll be neighbors of a high school. That's our target audience, our high school age students. And it's not just Kapolei. I should be clear. It's we're actually focusing on all of West Oahu, especially the Leeward Coast, and public and private schools. But because we're right there with Kapolei High School, they're going to be a natural group for us to work with. But we're also want to work with families and communities. So it's not just for high school students. One of the areas that we're looking into building programs is on green careers. We're calling it, well, we're not coining the term, but we're borrowing the term that's been used, green collar jobs. Like white collar jobs, blue collar jobs, green collar jobs, those that are good for the environment. And we want to help students especially know what the options are, especially in Hawaii. You don't have to go away to have a green collar job. You can do something right here that will help your community. So we want to expose them to the opportunities as well as have them think about what kind of education do I need even beyond high school to get to that point.
How big is agriculture in Hawaii now? We've lost our plantations. We see all these lands fallow.
It's still big, agriculture is actually a new field for my learning, so I don't have all the facts down. But from what I'm learning is actually the number one, at least, income producing area for agriculture is in nurseries. Not necessarily the big farms out there, but potted things, things that even smaller farming type operations. So there's just a lot more. It's definitely more diversified. I think that the challenge though is how do you make it economically feasible, right? Because we have all kinds of issues with water, especially. I think a lot of people think, oh, if we just save ag land, we're going to save farming. But I've been told from many of the farmers is you can give me land, but if there's no access to water or affordable water, I can't farm it.
Right.
So it needs to be both. And there are lands that are already ag, but the water is not available, so it can't be farmed. So we really have to look at the deeper issues, not just preserving the lands, but making them productive and making it affordable to do that. So.
We're probably looking forward to real water wars in the near future.
It's not just Hawaii, too. It's global.
It's worldwide.
Global, the access to clean drinking water. So this is another thing where, it's a little bit off topic, but it's something that I think people need to understand is where does our fresh water come from?
Right.
How long does it take for that raindrop to get to our cup?
And when we put water in a bottle, and ship it to somewhere else, how does that affect us locally? That's a whole nother subject.
It's a whole nother subject, but it's something that's hugely important. And I think, whenever we wash our cars with and let the water run, it's like that's valuable water, that we could be
Exactly.
drinking and growing food. So we need to conserve. We really do.
So what do you see as the future of the Learning Center?
Well, I actually brought some pictures, if I may share them with you. These are artists' renderings of what the Learning Center we hope will look like, though we have to say it's artist rendering. So this is an aerial view of the building. There'll be two basic strips that will house classrooms as well as a performance area. And all these other things are like, gardens that
I
we'll
can
have.
see solar panels
Right,
and
solar
hot wire panels and garden.
Right, and the green roof.
Yeah.
Right, the green roof. So we're going to try to get things that are locally produced, like even the walls will be made out of things that are, I forgot what the term is, but it's like kind of like the cinder block, but it's locally made type of things, and it'll be really attractive. And we'll have native plants. We'll have indoor-outdoor learning areas. We really want to, make that concept that not all learning happens in a classroom, but expand your spaces. This is a performing hall, and we'll have an outdoor performing area, like a gathering area to do larger performances or outdoor performances. And this is an example of what one of the classrooms could look like. Very basic, it's not going to be super high-tech kind of things where you press a button and hopefully you don't break anything, because I break things all the time. But very versatile, multi-purpose, but designed to have technology installed in there and upgraded, as we can. So
fiber optics built in.
Hopefully, well, we're
That
still
all
raising
depends
money
on your budget, right?
for the building. So
Yeah.
actually, anybody who wants to support us, we're still looking for funds.
How do you work with DOE?
Yeah, it's an excellent
that can be a
question.
real challenge.
Well, see, our project is really a pilot to see how a nonprofit private organization can work with a public agency like the DOE and partner on the same premises and work together with our own missions. They're not exactly the same, but trying to help each other out as possible. And hopefully, if we succeed, this is the kind of model that can work in many other communities. We were very fortunate that the principal, Al Nagasaka, was so visionary and very well connected with many other folks, and he could make this idea float. He has retired.
It really depends on the principal.
Right. He has retired, and when he was retiring, we're like, what's going to happen if the new principal is like, well, I like your building, but I think I'll use it for something else. That would be tragic. Fortunately, the new principal, Eldon Esmeralda, was a VP of that school and knew all about us, and he is equally visionary, and he's also a great implementer, total supporter, and the staff has been very, very supportive. They see this as a really positive working relationship. But you're absolutely right. And I think it's not just the DOE, it's anything. It's any relationship you have, it's made by people.
Right.
That relationship you develop with people and the
Is
trust
that part
that
of
you
educational
develop.
technology?
I think it is, the interpersonal relationships, and that's part of even with the Ag Leadership Program. By putting these 12 to 14 people together all the time, they develop a bond. And there might be clashes sometimes, but it's how you work through those clashes. And that's, I think, part of education. That might be missing is how
relationships
you,
is everything. If you can't leverage a relationship, you can't get it done.
Right, and that's what I try to impart, if there's any wisdom, to the younger folks who tend to see things black and white, good, bad, evil, etc. These guys are good, these guys are bad. It's like, not necessarily, maybe in some cases, but not necessarily for all cases. They're all made by people who have their own issues, their own reasons, their own feelings, their own values. But the more you can try to understand that, maybe the closer you can get to common ground.
One of the problems always is funding, and DOE is facing some real problems. The what happens when they have to concentrate just on core subjects, teaching to a test that will give them accreditation, and all of the extra stuff has to take second fiddle?
This is also another subject for environmental education, so maybe we can talk about that another time. But that's basically my field, is environmental education, and it's, oftentimes that gets pushed to the side as maybe an elective thing or a nice to have, not core to have.
And it should be built right into the course.
It should be integrated, really. It should, because your environment is everything around you.
But
basically,
when you're forced to teach to a test, those things kind of float away.
You tend to compartmentalize things, and I think what you lose are the relationships that you have. Like this subject is English, this subject is math, this subject is science or social studies, and you just learn things in disparate pockets. But really, environmental education can connect it all. You learn about water issues. You can use math. You can write about it in English. There's social issues. There's science. I mean, you can really connect it all. And I think that's what's missing, is especially how kids learn. How motivating is it to just learn for the test?
Right.
Versus if it's about your community, about making your community better.
Now, when the Malama Learning Center is privately financed, grants and whatever, that's always tenuous.
Yes.
But that allows you to offer a service to the school that may be strapped in other areas.
And I think that's why the school, Kapolei High School in particular, is eager to have us there, because we can offer some things that they can't. And we're also looking into teacher training too. It's hard for teachers to get all this new information about green technologies and all of that, in addition to teaching what they need to teach. And then when they had the furlough Fridays, there's just no time to do anything. So if we can offer information and be a resource, if they want to know, where can I find out more information about X, Y, and Z, about sustainability, we may not have the answers right there, but we can connect them to the sources.
Right. Yeah. How widely is educational technology understood in the teaching profession? Is it something pretty new?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's very new, and I'm not an education expert, so I hesitate to answer definitively on that. But it's not a new field. In fact, I was looking online, and the U.S. Department of Education has an educational technology office. So they try to support educators in using educational technology. So it's something that's there, but I think it's not necessarily something that every teacher learns.
Right.
And especially nowadays with online learning and just the access to information so much broader and quicker, I think teachers are forced to learn this. It's something that they can't ignore.
Right. Well, online education is becoming more accepted in the colleges, and I think even the high schools. I know my daughter teaches in a charter school where most of the teaching is done online.
Yeah, I heard some statement was made that even locally they think, within a matter of years, a large percentage of our students will be learning outside of the regular classroom.
We're getting down on the end of this. Can we kind of summarize what you see as a future of what you're trying to do?
Well, what I'm trying to do is really to promote environmental education through, whether it's through the schools, communities, adults, from child to adulthood. And
so right now you're trying to outreach to Leeward Oahu.
With the Malama Learning Center, our focus is Leeward Oahu. But I see this as something that really is relevant to all of Hawaii, if not all of the world, right? It's something that we're not creating ourselves either. There are other models out there, but we're hoping that education needs to evolve with the times.
Pauline, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and your expertise, and Aloha.
Mahalo for letting me be on your show.
Thank you.